Hey, everyone. Welcome to another edition of KickSaga. This is the show where I talk with board game creators who are working on taking their games to crowdfunding. We'll talk to them once before they launch their game and then again after the process is complete to see what they did to prepare and then how things went afterwards. And we have kind of a special episode for you today because if you recall back quite a few months ago, earlier this year, we talked with Joe Paul about his game Prestige. And that conversation went a little differently than normal because right before we were getting ready to record that episode, which we were going to talk about him getting ready to launch the game with a partner on Kickstarter. Turns out that didn't end up coming to fruition, and then so he was kind of left trying to figure out how to regroup. And we kind of left it where he was still looking for options and seeing what he was going to do. And so we're here to kind of pick things up from that point moving forward. And we ended up with some good news in that the game did end up getting picked up. And so in this particular episode, we're going to be talking with Joe and then also a return guest, Jack Dunbar, who you might recognize from New Kingdom Gardeners that we talked about, his initial game that he launched on Kickstarter. And so they kind of teamed up to get Prestige off the ground. So I'll just kind of throw it over to you, Joe. Maybe you can kind of talk us through what happened after our interview and after the Kickstarter was canceled.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So, as you mentioned, Prestige was ready to go into a Kickstarter. I had a separate publisher that was going to publish the game. They had worked with me for a little over a year to kind of get it ready and to get it from the concept level to being ready for Kickstarter. And then that partnership dissolved about 2 weeks before the Kickstarter actually launched. Um, and that was definitely a trial in and of itself, but I was determined not to kind of give up on Prestige. I knew that it was a game that I had poured, well, at this point, I think almost 5 years of my game design adventures into. It's a game that I really love, and a game that I wasn't going to just give up on. So I had weighed a couple of options. I had talked to a few people in the industry about their experience, both with there are other people who have had a publisher dissolve their relationship before a game launched. There also were people that I talked to who had launched their own game. And Jack was one of those individuals. I just kind of reached out just to kind of hear his experience. I was in a little bit of a defeated position at that point. Didn't really know where to go, and I was just looking for some guidance of like, what does it actually take to self-publish a game, if that was a route that I was willing to consider. And I think at the very end of that conversation, Jack, I think we just kind of ended it with like, do you asked me, do you want me to publish the game, which was not my intent of calling you up, but
Yeah.
definitely the best case scenario of that call. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, we didn't sign it right away. I was still weighing the options, but eventually we did get it signed. We got it transitioned over to New Kingdom and Kingdoms of the Earth, Jack's subsidiary. And yeah, since then we've brought it through BackerKit as our funding platform. And just this past week, we sent the final files over to our manufacturer.
Yeah.
Awesome. Love a good happy ending to a story like that. So Jack, when Joe approached you with kind of his dilemma, what was your thought process and what kind of led you to, saying, hey, this might fit for us?
Yeah. I mean, I had a few, so there are a few things that kind of lined up all around the same time. One is I just kind of gotten to know Brandon Blocker, who was publishing the game. So I knew him a little bit. We'd been talking about publishing and stuff, and he was expressing some, like concerns about publishing board games and what that's like. And we were just having conversations about the difficulty of it a little bit. So I knew him. And Oak Lounge Games is the company that originally signed Prestige and then had to had to drop. And you know, I kind of saw the story from both sides because I knew Brandon and I knew Fritz. I'd known Fritz for a long time. We kind of started designing around the same time, and so he'd been working on Prestige while I was working on New Kingdom Gardeners. I think maybe Fritz, you may have even tested some of my earlier iterations of Gardeners before it was what it is now. But we'd known each other well as designers, and I had just published Gardeners, just fulfilled it, and was really eager to try to, you know, work towards publishing other designers' games and being a publisher, not just a designer, not just a solo act, you know. And Fritz was a person I was really excited to work with. I mean, I love the guy. It's been fun working with you, Fritz, and kind of taking this to the next step. And I knew it would be easy to work with Fritz. And I was pretty confident because I had the relationship with Brandon that we could work out a deal and figure things out together. And it just happened to work out because of the relationship on both sides that it was able to, it was a smooth transition from Oak Lounge and then a smooth transition to working together. However, I will say, man, I learned a lot about why, you know, some of that conventional wisdom about like publishers tend to do things like hire their own artists. So sometimes they'll buy a game and they'll completely restart. And I learned a lot about why that is because the first year we really started, I picked up the contract in July of last year. So it was 2023. So it was shortly after the fulfillment of Gardeners was complete. Or no, I hadn't fulfilled Gardeners. I'd just funded Gardeners. I was working towards the fulfillment, which was coming up in December. So I knew I had, you know, some runway. It would take some time to get Prestige going. I thought, you know, I'll just do it in the spring. But by the time the spring rolled around, fulfilling one campaign and then starting on the next was pretty challenging. But the biggest challenge was, you know, existing contracts that remained with the old publisher to finish things out. And I wasn't very great about my communication on that. So it just turned, it took longer than expected because I didn't know everything about the game up to that stage. And so I was really out of the loop. I had to kind of pull Fritz in more than I think the average designer would. And I feel bad that it kind of had to go that way. Because generally I think a publisher would handle all of those things. And it makes sense why you just kind of like sign a game and it's like, okay, let's retheme it or let's bring in a new artist or bring in a new team or whatever. I see why that would be because there's just like already so much conversation that's happened. And then I come in with like maybe a new vision or different way of doing things. And it just kind of disrupted the workflow and pushed us out later than I expected. So initially we were going to launch in April, had to push back to the summer. And so we had kind of a delayed launch. And now on the fulfillment side, we've had a delayed fulfillment than what I expected, but really eager to get those final files off and hopeful that, I mean, I'm going to press to deliver by the end of the year, but we'll see.
Yeah. So you took the game, which basically had pretty much, you know, final art and final graphic design and everything like that. And you decided to basically keep the art that it had, but you ended up doing some refinements, I guess, or some additions afterwards. And I could imagine that that's difficult because you're trying to, I guess, work with someone who had worked with a previous publisher, and then you're trying to kind of wrap your brain around what had already happened, what the game was about, what it had gone through, and I guess pulling in. And I'm sorry, I was calling you Joe, but you're calling him Fritz, so I'm going to call you Fritz because that's a much cooler name. So, so you pulled in Fritz, and I assume to kind of help you through that transition and stuff. What other challenges did you find with? And maybe I'll throw this over to Fritz for this question. What other challenges did you find with transitioning a nearly complete game to another publisher, and kind of maybe some lessons that you guys learned that if that happens to the next person out there, that would help them navigate that a little bit better?
Yeah. So I'll say from my perspective, while I saw a lot of the back end, it was a very smooth transition for me. So I didn't I was aware of some of the challenges that Jack and the other publishers were facing, but I don't think I felt it as much. But I certainly saw some of them where there were perhaps tasks that I recognized needed to be done, and then there's still things that like I would have loved to have tackled, and eventually all of these things got done. I think we're delivering what is my vision for the game, but I think if we hadn't been pushed back, there would have been like levels of, like this would be really nice to update, or this needs a little bit more refining, but we might not have gotten to that, and trying to identify through a transition of one publisher to the next of like what is important that like was stacked up to be done, what is important that I'd still like to see done, even if it wasn't going to be originally, and kind of balancing that and recognizing that for me this is a hobby, this is a creative endeavor, but at the same time for Jack and for Oak Lounge this is a business. So things well, things didn't really get left on the cutting room floor, at with this final layout and everything, but things could have been. So kind of preparing myself for what could have been, just because you have bottom lines at the end of the day. So I'm really grateful for Jack and all that he did, because I think the way that Prestige has come out is like truly ideal. But yeah, I think just kind of preparing myself for what uh, could have been done was a challenge, because when you sign with a publisher, you're already preparing yourself for them being able to just take what you've kind of put together and run with it themselves. You're giving them the baton to get it to the final mile, and then here I was doing that twice. It's a little unnerving, but it all worked out really well for me, at least.
Cool. Yeah. And Jack, how about from your perspective, any kind of lessons learned that you think might help you or future publishers when you're trying to, take a game that was getting ready to get published by another publisher and bring it in under your house?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that was really tricky about Prestige is that it was like 90% done. I think had it been like 50% done, it actually may have been a little bit easier.
Hmm.
The fact that it was so far along actually made it very challenging because, like, for instance, like here's just a very simple thing. There's a resource in the game that is one of the potential, um, I guess it's not really a loss condition, but it can have negative effects or positive effects on the game, which is your military. So like the military, presence in the city that you're building in Prestige. And that had been called a couple of different things. I think now it's called defense, but initially it was called might, or Fritz, remind me, what was the initial name for that resource?
The initial was defense. We did
Okay.
move on to might. We had
Yeah.
considered strength. We had considered a few other things. Yeah, but yeah, there was a lot of history to that even before Jack had kind of taken over. So I think we were at might when you had taken over.
Yep. So that's kind of an interesting thing because then you're like, okay, we're changing this, and there's just like there's reference to this resource throughout the whole rule book
Mm,
on many cards, and
yeah.
it's like, okay, we're changing the icon. Well, what are we changing the icon for? Is it might? Is it defense? Or it's for might, but that's actually going back to defense, which it originally was. And so like there were just little tiny communication things like that where I'm like,
Yeah.
wait, what are we doing? And then realizing like, oh, actually, this is like one of 40 icons that still needs to be done. And I've been like focused on it for like a week. And it's like, oh, okay, that's just little things like that kind of trip things up. And uh, yeah, I think with Gardeners, when I went to publish it, like one of the things with Prestige is I feel like for fans and backers, this has been a long road. They were waiting for a Kickstarter, and then I had to push it out when I took it on, which is like,
Yeah.
is this publisher going to do the same thing? But it was largely because I'm just like, oh man, I just wasn't able to like dial in the art and get it to the place where I wanted it to be for us to publish so that we could fulfill quickly. The other thing that kind of compounded things for me on the communication side with Prestige has been that I had another game that I signed called Sowers, New Kingdom Sowers, and I launched that in April. I did Gardeners in April of 23, and I did Sowers in April of 2024. And just fulfilled all of the copies of that, but had we had like Prestige ran in July. It ended at the end of July. Fritz and I got on a plane the day it ended, went to Gen Con, came back from Gen Con. I'm fulfilling sowers, trying to finish up Prestige, and then it'd been like 2 months with no backer update, and it's like, oh, oops. So they're just little things like that where once you start running a business, it extends timelines just naturally because you're like, you've got all of this admin stuff, especially when it's your side gig. I expected like, oh, this will go just like Gardeners, but Gardeners, it was me and an artist, and that was it, doing everything. And Prestige, by the time we were done with it, was a team of 3 artists, and then a designer, myself, and then a former publisher. So there were 6 of us, kind of all chatting, not counting all of the contractors I use, like manufacturing and stuff like that, are just in the back end that are just my conversation. So, it just became, a much bigger administrative task than I bargained for. Cause I was like, oh, I didn't realize how much like exponential growth there would be in time from that. And so like the timelines I communicated, I felt like were not factoring that in. So
that's a great lesson that it seems like it would be a lot less work to bring on a game that's 90% done. You just have to take it that last 10% and then bam, put it out the door. And so it's great to hear you kind of talk through the hidden costs of time and effort and communication and catching up that are built into that other publishers and designers and so forth need to consider when they're considering this. It sounds like, almost like when if you're a company and you're going to buy another company, you need to do your due diligence. You need to learn about how that company operates, and then you need to fold in all of the people that are working in that company under your company. And it's a lot of work. It sounds like it's a lot of work, but you got it there. And so let's talk about the crowdfunding campaign that you did for Prestige. You decided to go on BackerKit. So I'd love to talk a little bit about what led you to BackerKit, and then we'll kind of talk about your experiences there.
Yeah. Fritz, I'll let you talk about your experience, but I'll answer the first question there about why do BackerKit. So there are 3 reasons that I did BackerKit, really. One was, actually 4 reasons that I did BackerKit. One was that I was approached by BackerKit, and they had all of these incentives. They're trying to build this new crowdfunding platform. Yep. And so I was a creator that they reached out to because I'd run a successful Kickstarter. And so I was like, oh, great. I'd love to try it out and see what's going on out there. One of the things that I was thinking a lot about is how to supplement my retail income from the sale of games with other income. So one of the things I've been thinking about is consulting. I'm an accountant in my day job, and by working on multiple pledge managers, I have more that I can share with other board game creators and help them. So if that advice is worth money, then I could charge consulting fees. So that was something that I was thinking about in the back of my head. Like, oh yeah, working on different platforms will give me better experience. And then even if it doesn't result in revenue, it's something that I can give back to the community. Like, hey, I've done that. I know what it's like. I can talk to you about it. So that's one thing. And that was kind of the first thing. The other thing is with it, there was some ad spend that came from BackerKit. So there were some incentives for going with BackerKit. One of the things they really sold me on was all Kickstarter backers have a BackerKit account, or the number is very high. It's like 99% because BackerKit is such a prevalent pledge manager, and has been for so long. So I was like, okay, well, there's a built-in audience there. I already had some audience exposure to Kickstarter and thought audience exposure to BackerKit could be beneficial. The third thing is logistically, I was concerned about the fact that Prestige, my brand New Kingdom Gaming, is explicitly biblically inspired board games. And I didn't want to confuse my audience by having, my Kickstarter campaigns, which are running these biblically inspired designs, and then another Kickstarter campaign, same creator, same name, everything, that says, oh, this is now not biblically inspired. I didn't want my audience to feel
Gotcha.
bait and switched, but I also didn't want them to be confused. I wanted everybody to know, hey, I'm doing this thing. And then similarly, Fritz and Oak Lounge Games had already built up an audience. I wanted to be able to direct that audience to something specific that was very clear. So that was something. And as part of this, what I did is I created a DBA under New Kingdom Gaming called Kingdoms of the Earth for games that are not explicitly biblically inspired. They can have themes that are outside of that theme.
Nice.
And then the fourth reason, and this is a very minor point, but an important one for a new creator, is I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to run campaigns if I had any sort of fulfillment leg with gardeners or a fulfillment leg with sowers. I wanted to be able to get a pre-launch page up soon and start doing some pre-marketing, even while maybe like fulfillment was still ongoing. And I wasn't sure if Kickstarter was going to approve that for me or not. So I was like, well, if I'm on a different platform, there won't be any hangups for that. Which the timeline thing actually turned out not to be an issue because we pushed the timeline anyway. So could have been fine. But those are the reasons I went with BackerKit. Some ad spend, like the incentive of like being approached by BackerKit, just I was like, oh, cool. And they had good data. I was interested in, really segmenting brands. And then I was concerned about timeline. And I thought BackerKit would help us fulfill timeline. So.
Cool. What were some of the incentives they offered? Like what kind of, when you said they approached you, what made it kind of interesting or better, or what did they kind of try to throw in there to make it more enticing?
Yeah, so I don't know if this is still true, but like setup for the pledge manager, there's normally a setup fee that was waived. There was some marketing dollars, like minimal marketing dollars for advertising that were included for for signups at the time. I don't know if they're still doing any of these things, but it was just minor things like that. And then also they were kind of like talking about adding fees to some of these features. And they were unsure if they were going to do that or not, but it was like, you can get access to launch, which is their like pre-marketing. And then you can get access to crowdfunding and access to pledge manager. There's no like setup fee for any of those things. You just pay the percentage. So cool. I was like, oh, that's kind of sweet, and also, I'm very familiar with BackerKit. I backed between GameFound and Kickstarter, I backed a couple hundred projects, board game projects. So I was very familiar with the pledge manager and eager to see what it's like from the back end.
Cool. And Fritz, what was your experience with BackerKit as the designer and someone working on the project?
Yeah, so during the actual campaign, Jack had added me as I don't remember what they call it, but like a contributor. So I had like just as much access to the actual campaign as Jack did, as one of our graphic artists did. So I was able to see all of that was going on. I was part of the project, putting it together and reviewing those like files and all that stuff. So I would say that our experience at BackerKit was had its ups and downs, to say the least. We had a bit of a rough start, which was very unanticipated for us. I didn't know the numbers myself, but I know Jack had been like evaluating the numbers based off industry standards, and we thought we had a really good following. We thought that we had the numbers to possibly fund on the first day, if not in the next couple of days. And I guess spoilers alert, we ended up funding on the very last day. And it was great to fund on that day and even blow through our remaining revealed stretch goals. But it was definitely a challenge on that first day when we really weren't seeing the numbers that we thought. And there was a couple of hiccups that some were on us, some that couldn't have been avoided, some that were just the fact that BackerKit was kind of an up and coming platform, so it didn't necessarily have the audience or the pull that we thought it might have at that point in time. For instance, like we had a great number of people pre-sign up for us on our pre-launch page, but very few of them actually ended up signing up on day one. And we discovered that there's kind of twofold to that. One, people were getting our emails saying that we launched, but then they were going to Kickstarter looking for our project,
Ah,
which I didn't understand at first because it's like the
yeah,
email has the link. Like, why aren't you clicking on
right.
the link? But I also get it that, like, you might get that email on your computer at work, and then you take your phone out and you load up the Kickstarter app, and then you're
Yeah.
like, oh, it's not there. But another challenge was that people were going onto the Kickstarter app and they were finding Prestige was on there, because one of the
Yeah.
things that had kind of gotten lost in the shuffle was Oak Lounge Games had their pre-launch page. Um, it was
Interesting.
actually under my name. We were going to launch it through my Kickstarter account. They had transferred the account back over to me, but I didn't know that the page was still up.
Mm,
And then once as we realized that, it also took us like 2 days to get that page down because the
yeah.
functions were going awry on Kickstarter for some reason. So we had all these people who thought they were signing up for the campaign that were signing up to an empty funnel that we couldn't have any access to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was just something that was an unforeseen challenge. Um,
Yeah.
but BackerKit itself had some great features that I was really excited to try out. So we did all these live streams as part of the campaign, which I was really excited for, because one thing with Prestige was I had really wanted it to be certain aspects to be community driven. So we had all these uh, guest writers who wrote all of the stories for our event cards. And that was great because I'm not a great author, and they were able to write some really interesting things. So we were able to have these live streams where we talked to a few of them, got to hear their experience as a guest writer, what else they do in the industry, because they're all either like podcasters or story writers, influencers in different genres and
Mm,
whatnot, historians, and just kind of hear their take on that. And BackerKit had that built into the campaign, so they have this live stream function. It launches your live stream onto like the front page of BackerKit when you go live. So that was
mm,
kind of cool to
that's
see.
cool.
We didn't have too much engagement with them, which was a little unfortunate, but I think a lot of that, live streaming is just hard, and I'm definitely not a streamer in my day to day. So it was cool to talk to people. It was cool to engage our audience that way. I'm not sure how much it benefited us, but it was at least fun and exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say, I think, I could talk about pros and cons of BackerKit,
Yeah.
but do you want me to do that, Matt?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, one of the pros of BackerKit for sure is the um, community features. I mean, just the community engagement features that they have for creators are really strong. I mean,
Mm,
live streaming, you can do polls, comments, you can offer like badges, you can do like contests and stuff. I mean, we barely
nice.
scratched the surface of what you can do with their community engagement. And I think that's really cool. It was something I was actually really excited about with BackerKit, and I'm glad that we took advantage of it and did some
Yep.
live streaming and stuff like that, because that was fun, and it was cool to do. And I think for the like one or two backers who were really like watching everything, they got a lot out of it and enjoyed it and had a good time. So I feel really glad that we did that for them. Also, BackerKit's just clean, like on the front, the user side, it's pretty clean interface. There are a few major cons though. The page build, the way you build pages on BackerKit is way different than how it builds
Uh,
for Kickstarter. So, and I hired Brandon Omi, who from Tangerine Games, who is a friend of mine. He did our BackerKit page build, and he did it like 11th hour. He did a great job on it,
wow.
but he was just like, "Man, this is not the same as Kickstarter. It's pretty challenging." So,
It's crazy because it
Brandon,
looks like on the surface, it looks the same. It looks very
yeah,
similar.
yeah, it was very different. It was
Yeah.
hard to build. Brandon did an
Interesting.
awesome job with that. Um,
Cool.
and there were weird glitches. Like there's one where like the cards are kind of all sort of like they look like missing number from Pokemon, where it's like all a glitch or something.
Uh,
But it's on the tribe decks. There's just like blocks, and I don't know. It's just weird things like that
yeah.
that were slightly different and different enough with like professionals that it made it challenging. Because Brandon, like, no, he's a professional graphic designer. He's done lots of Kickstarter pages.
Right.
Popped in the backer kit and was like, "Whoa, this is not the same." So that's something to be aware of. I mean, the nice thing is like BackerKit has had some of the features that Kickstarter is now building for a long time, like pledge management, the like side scroll table of contents and stuff
Mm.
like that. So they do that stuff well. They do have an audience for sure, but I would say that the big downside of BackerKit is just the expectation, and this is a huge downside, like cannot be overstated for a publisher. The audience is not ready to support crowdfunding like they are in Kickstarter. Like,
Yep.
and I don't know if this is true of GameFound. I think the perception is increasing for GameFound. It really depends on your project. If you have a GameFound audience project, one with like lots of minis, or the price point's like $90 or more, it's probably a sweet spot where you can get away with doing a GameFound project early on. But
Yep.
I think just in the zeitgeist, the idea is like crowdfunding. Oh, that's on Kickstarter, and
Yep.
like we communicated for, I don't know, maybe a year that we were going to BackerKit, and still people they went to Kickstarter automatically. Even people that like Fritz and I, like our friends, I have like a playtest group, and I was like, hey guys, why do you think we're not hitting? And they're like, I can't find your projects. And I'm like, oh yeah. I mean,
yeah, it's like a muscle memory. Like there's a game that's launching. Let me go to Kickstarter to find it, and you don't even think about it. So that's a hard hurdle to overcome, especially when you're a newer creator and don't have the thousands or hundreds of thousands of followers that some of these big companies who are able to launch on these other platforms and do well have. It's tough. Yeah.
The really interesting thing is that from like an ad spend perspective, like we were getting the conversion rate that we needed. We were getting the follower count that we needed. So I was like, Fritz, don't worry about it. We'll fund 48 hours. It's fine. We'll get the 20%, because you get 20% from your Kickstarter pre-launch followers.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is we did get that number. We got 28. So if you look at my like creator followers on BackerKit, because there's like page followers and then creator followers.
Okay.
Creator followers converted at like 28%. And then for page followers, it was very high. It was like 40%. The thing is, we didn't have as many page followers as, I would have liked. Right. So it took a little bit more to get, like, we had to get those numbers exact to fund. But then the other thing is the conversion happened later. It was like after, it was in mid campaign. And then especially on those last couple days, we pulled in, like, I think an additional $1,000 that kind of got us to fund it. So
interesting.
So we did hit the numbers, but we just hit them later. And if we had hit them early, that just jumps the curve,
Right.
And there's just not the same monitoring tools there are for Kickstarter. Like there's KickTrack, which is a tool that just monitors Kickstarter performance. And that's fun. It's helpful to like tell your backers like, hey, we're projected, when on day one, you can be like, we're projected to fund 11,000%, and then it drops to like a more reasonable number. But, there's just like those kind of tools that don't exist for BackerKit, and just kind of leave it on the side as something that's like thought of primarily as a pledge manager still.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think a lot of those tools that are built around the Kickstarter ecosystem help to fuel the interest and the engagement and that with Kickstarter, when you don't have that ecosystem around these other platforms. That's another reason why they might not be as have, I guess, the built-in kind of audience and excitement that Kickstarter does. But you got the game funded, so it is going to be made, and I'm looking forward to that, because I love this game. From the first time I play tested it, it's an ingenious game, and it's a lot of fun, and I can't wait to have it on my table. So what's kind of, where are you guys in the process now, and what are the next steps with Prestige?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we just finished up all of the final files. So Jack had sent those over to the manufacturer. Literally, I think it was yesterday. You sent that message out, Jack. So that's super exciting. Or I guess renovate is not the right word, but reinvigorated all of the graphic design. So now it's all crisp and clean, and I'm really excited about the way it turned out. And then I I'll let you speak to the manufacturing side of that, Jack, as that's more your court.
Sure. Yeah. So should take about 3 weeks to print, and then it'll get on a truck over to send from China, and I'm going to ship backers from send from China. The thing with send from China is that it is a little bit slow to get to the States, but I'm hopeful that by doing so, my manufacturer's in Guangdong. Send from China is like literally a few miles away, so it's a short hop to get to the fulfillment partner. They'll send it out. I'll get the extra copies sent to my house, and then I'll do self-fulfillment for anything that falls through the cracks, which will probably happen. But
Yep.
Can't help it; just happens.
It's part of the game, right?
Yeah. I'm excited though. I think the final product looks really good. It plays really well. We were patient on the art process. We got some development work done between that July and December. We took another, 6-9 months really in 2024 to nail the graphic design, to get it really clean, get everything consistent. We addressed some color issues that were affecting some like color blindness. In some testing that I do, I test with some colorblind folks who, for them it's a big deal to have things match, and that was really helpful. Kind of informed our design, made some changes to palette, some other things, and nice. I think the final product is going to be, like Fritz said, it's everything that I hoped it would be, and I'm really excited to add it to the catalog and just keep chugging and selling and see, if we can get it fulfilled. The nice thing is our manufacturer partner at Nice Funny Games, they're pretty on top of things. If they can get it printed by the 13th, we get it over to send from China. We could be shipping the week of Christmas, which is like kind of a bummer. It's not going to get there by the holidays.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll wait till January, but we'll just see how it goes from here. Small print runs like we do are, they print fast. So that there's that benefit. All the printing can be done in a day or two. It just depends on when it gets on the schedule, and
right.
Once all the quality control is done. And there's a lot of text in Prestige, so we'll need to like comb every card and double check that everything looks right. So
cool, exciting. I think this was super interesting and very insightful. I think a lot of challenges that you guys overcame to get this game across the finish line, and hopefully you guys are happy and relieved. And of course the journey, like I always say, the journey is just beginning, right? The game isn't even out. Once it gets out, there's still the matter of getting it out there in people's hands and talking about it and all of that stuff. So I would love to wrap things up by just hearing from each one of you what's next on your plate. What's the next game coming out? Like Fritz, are you working on any other designs? And for Jack, especially in this new line of games, the Kingdom of the Earth, I think what it's called. If you have anything else lined up for that as well. So Fritz, why don't you kick us off with that?
Sure. So I don't have anything hard pressing that I'm really like barreling towards. I've actually decided to take a year off of like concentrating on designs, because I've got probably 8 or 9 projects in the back of my mind that I've been putting on the back burner, and for now I'm just kind of letting my mind export ideas onto a page, but not really committing to anything in particular. But I've got some fun ones. I've got one about procrastinating that I've been putting off for a couple of years now. I've got a big epic space saga kind of game that was my original design that I kind of put on the back burner once Prestige became a reality. So I don't know what one will show its head first, but after this year or so, I'll probably dive back into kind of pushing one design forward.
Love it. Kind of an organic process and letting whatever feels like it's ready bubble up to the top. Very cool.
Definitely.
How about you, Jack? What's next in the Kingdom of the Earth line?
Oh man, well, for me, the big focus right now is just fulfillment of Prestige. Like in the near term, it's fulfillment of Prestige. I'll have 3 SKUs in the catalog, 3 games, and then expansion for New Kingdom. So I really have 4. which is cool.
Yeah.
So focus on sales through the holiday season. I just got my inventory that I currently have on hand to Amazon. So really excited
Nice.
to be able to hit that for Black Friday.
Cool.
So Black Friday, and then holidays. I just got. I actually have a call later today with a group from, or with a guy who is a representative for the ARC Experience and Creation Museum, which is it's a big Christian attraction in sort of the Midwest. I think it's in Kentucky. I don't quote me. I don't know for sure. I didn't check, but they are interested in some products for New Kingdom. So really excited about that. Just trying to sort of slowly build these relationships through retail distribution. But for me as a designer, I've been working with my friend Weston on a design called Tribulation for about a year now. He and I have been working on it together, but I've been working on this game for 3 years. It's a Angels versus Demons sort of co-op boss battler game. And I got to play it a lot at Gen Con. It was a lot of fun. It's going to be my next New Kingdom title.
Cool.
And then Kingdoms of the Earth actually signed a game by Devin Metlin, who's a popular board game designer. And that game is called Folk Tales. And we're still working through sort of the theming of that and then the product launch plan and what that's going to look like. But it's a really interesting polyomino exploration / battle game. So it's a really interesting game, and really excited to see what happens with that and just continue both of these branches of the business and see what happens next. So yeah,
cool.
Pushing on into 25 with a couple new designs and then 4 under the belt. So yeah,
exciting. Yeah, I love checking back in with folks to see how things are progressing. I'm super excited for the success for both of you guys. And I'll have links to Prestige and some of the other projects we talked about under this video. And thanks again, guys, for being here. And thank you guys for watching this episode of KickSaga. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe to this channel. We're going to continue to talk with board game creators and learn from them about their process, about the launch on crowdfunding, and then kind of like this, we'll do some follow-ups with folks and see how things have progressed afterwards, all in service of you guys who are out there who want to create your own board games and get more games out into the world. I mean, that's what this is all about. I look forward to seeing what new stuff is coming around the bend. Until next time, I'm Matt Rodella saying goodbye.